We wanted this to be intimate, a personal journey, the journey of a woman on the world stage facing all sorts of things that women face.
I just feel sorry for myself listening to that because I just have no idea what's coming.
This is your first feature, yeah?
This is, yes.
So talk about how that happened.
Sure. So this film is 7 years in the making, and the way I always talk about it is that there were many stewards of this project over the years. It all started when Jacinda's husband, Clark, picked up his camera and started shooting behind the scenes. And then a small team of New Zealanders found out that he was kind of shooting this behind the scenes and jumped in and did a few key shoots. I think everybody that was working on it in New Zealand recognized that it was a powerful moment in time and it should be documented. But there was never any plan until Jacinda resigned and came to the States. And then the New Zealand team came here to finance the movie. That's when our American financier came on board and brought me on board. So I got a phone call one day that some footage had been shot behind the scenes of this incredible woman's administration. And as you can imagine, I lost my mind. That's always the kind of phone call you want to get, right? And I had admired her for years. Obviously, I took notice of her after she passed the gun legislation. And then during the pandemic, I was desperate for science-based leadership. And so I only had to look at about 2 minutes of the footage to know that I wanted to take on the project. At the time, the footage that I looked at was the breastfeeding footage. I had just had my second baby and I was struggling with very common issues that women struggle with. I came on board and we brought on an entire American team. And so this film really became 2 countries and 2 teams coming together to do this thing. And Jacinda was in the States at this point, so I was able to meet her and develop that relationship. And then we started shooting with her in Boston. So all of the interviews that are woven throughout the film, we filmed, Michelle and I did together. And then, of course, we got access to that incredible oral history project. And when we found out that there was 40 hours of these audio diaries that had been recorded when she was in office, my mind exploded again, because that's just a gift, right, from the documentary heavens to have that kind of stuff. And at that point, we just started working and putting together this film.
So your editorial background was an asset here because you're combining archive and these interviews, and you made the decision not to do talking heads.
Yeah, certainly my background as an editor was super helpful, but it was also really helpful in the field because, we had Clark's footage, but we couldn't, it would have been one movie with that material. And so we really had to source a lot of other material to kind of brushstroke in the context so that a global audience could kind of follow along. I also had a very clear sense of what's the connective tissue and how do we carry this story. And Michelle and I really wanted Jacinda's voice to be at the center of the film, almost as if you're sitting next to her and she's telling you a story. So that was sort of the approach with using the audio diaries as a portal into the past and then doing these incredibly intimate interviews with her. And we were really lucky because she was writing her memoir at the time, so she was in this very contemplative space. And you can see that in the interviews. They're pretty raw. She's pretty raw, and she's still processing, what she had just been through. And so those, I was grateful that it ended up working because we weren't sure. We didn't want her interview to play as like a master interview. We wanted it to feel like, reflection and intimate, but we were always aware that we wanted the past to kind of be propulsive and move forward in a cinema verite way. So we kind of had to balance the past and the present in that sense. And I guess because I've taken on a lot of projects with a lot of footage, I had a sense.
You worked with R.J. Cutler on
Yep.
Martha, one of my favorites.
Yep.
And the other, so Martha is an example of a movie where she didn't really have final cut. You had to work with her, as it were.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
what was the situation here? Where was the balance between being a little too positive or being fair or being harsh? I mean, how did you handle that? And did she have control?
she did not have control. She gave us a lot of freedom. She was a really good subject. And Clark really, I mean, you can imagine it was hard for him because he shot a lot of this footage to kind of like let go. We really were given space to work and figure out how to craft this movie. And she didn't see a cut until after we submitted to Sundance. The weight of it was a lot. But she, I think a lot of it is hard for her to watch. But because she is such a lover of history and documentation, I think she understood that even the stuff that like makes her, she is embarrassed by her, she doesn't think she looks good, or it's, she understands that that's all a part of the story. And she gave us great freedom to kind of do what we thought. We wanted this to be intimate, a personal journey, the journey of a woman on the world stage facing all sorts of things that women face, right? The balance of work and motherhood, what it looks like to have a supportive partner. And so it was important to us that this was a family story too, that you were invested in them as a family, because they were a unit. That's how she functioned. That's how she did her job. There's this myth that women can do it all and we can't, and we shouldn't be asked to, and women need support. And that was very important for us to show. And she just showed up unapologetically as herself. And I think that's what people really take note of. They feel the authenticity and they feel the conviction. And I think she demonstrates that you can be both empathetic and strong, that you can be kind and have resolve. It was important to us to show the portrait of the leader that we saw.
So you went to Sundance, you got into Sundance, that's a big deal.
Thank you.
And you won the World Cinema Audience Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you got to watch it there. So what was that like?
Oh, Sundance is stressful. Like if you're a film, you're worried about, is it going to sell? Is it going to? So there's a lot of that. And we had just finished the films and the fires had just happened in Los Angeles. So it was actually a very intense moment in time. But it was so beautiful. We premiered it at the Eccles, and when the lights came up, like people just leapt out of their seats, and I could feel the energy in the room, and I was able to kind of, for the first time, like, have a sense of like what we had done, because when you're in the thick of it, you have no perspective.
And they treated her like a rock star.
They did. We could not move anywhere in Park City without being stopped by somebody in the streets. It's been playing at festivals, and we're getting the same reaction everywhere. There's a palpable emotion in the room. I was just in Mexico City. We did a Sundance Mexico City, and we were invited to open the festival there last week. And afterwards, this young woman came up to me. She wanted to say something, but she was just so overcome with emotion, and you could like feel like everything was at the surface, and she just had tears in her eyes, and we just like hugged, and it was that. And that's the kind of, I think this is just, it's hitting a nerve with it's touching something inside people, and that is, the greatest thing in the world as a filmmaker. So
thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks so much.